And one last look at your traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center. On your Friday morning, do have a couple accidents to report, one at Fairfield Road and North Main, and then another at Killian Road and I-77. As far as weather today, 87 the high with a chance for afternoon thunderstorms. As same forecast for tomorrow with a high of 88, and a chance for a stray storm on Sunday with a high of 89 for your Father's Day. That's your traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on the early game. Nine o'clock on your Friday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. It's Outerhead and Jack Veltri. Congratulations, Jack. We've made it through the end of another week. That means we are that much closer to football finally getting here. 79 days until kickoff.
Yes, we are finally under the 80-day mark, and we're getting closer, man. Before we know it, we're going to be talking about being 70 days away and so on and so forth. So we're getting closer. I think we're sniffing it. We're not tasting it. We're sniffing it. Right?
We're sniffing it. Good thing. Actually, kind of a pretty busy sports weekend this weekend. You, of course, have the College World Series, which we'll get into here in a couple minutes, rolling off later on this afternoon. You've got the Game 4 of the NBA Finals coming up tonight. Game 5. Yeah, Game 5 of the Stanley Cup playoffs coming up tomorrow after a wild one last night. So you got quite a few things going on right now.
Yeah, no, it's been great so far. I mean, I think the finals in both sports have been pretty solid. And then I'm looking forward to this College World Series getting started. It's always such a fun event out there in Omaha, and I am dying to get out there someday.
We'll dive into the specifics of those 8 teams still left standing in college baseball coming up in just a second, but it is 9 o'clock. You got to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up. It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. Again, the field started with 64, and it's now down to only 8 teams left standing. And unfortunately, once again, for South Carolina fans, you are watching as a spectator, not involved with the final tournament to decide the college baseball national champion. But Arizona, Arkansas, Coastal Carolina, Louisville, LSU, Murray State, Oregon State, and UCLA all battling for the right to call themselves national champions over the course of the next couple days. And all gets rolling later on this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, it should be really fun. And it's a stark contrast compared to last year when you had 4 SEC teams and 4 ACC teams, and those were all good teams that you had in there last year. But this is different. I mean, you have 2 SEC teams in, and then you have a bunch of just random teams. Then you also have a mid-major in there in Murray State. So it makes for a much more exciting tournament, I would say, and we'll see what happens. There's a lot of underdog to this, I see, and a lot of just unknowns of what's going to happen this weekend.
Looking specifically at the SEC, and of course they got a record number of teams in the tournament with 13 this year. Only 2 left standing when it comes to Arkansas and LSU with the chance to win the national championship. Does one of them have to win the whole thing to justify how strong of a season this was for the SEC?
Yes and no. I think for these two specifically, I think they both need to win a College World Series. I would say Arkansas needs to win more than anyone, just because you look at their history and stuff. They came. I mean, if they didn't, if that foul ball did not drop in foul ground, what, like 2018 or whatever, against Oregon State,
Yep.
Arkansas is winning the College World Series right then and there, because there were two outs in the ninth when that happened. And so I think that's haunted them for years now. And so this is probably, I said it all year, I think this is probably one of Arkansas's best teams under Dave Van Horn. And this should be a team that is going to the finals. And if they're able to beat LSU, it makes it a lot easier to get there. I just think whoever the loser of this game, you're in the losers bracket automatically, and you're fighting for your life the rest of the way. It's a lot tougher to get to the finals, which it's possible, but it'd be a lot tougher. So I think the SEC, they need it to an extent, but like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's the end all be all if they don't, but Arkansas surely does need it.
By the way, that drop pop play, I think it was Oregon State they were playing that year. That might actually be the most heartbreaking like championship loss I've ever seen.
I'll say this about that, like, it looks like there's a lot of foul ground out there at Charles Schwab, and like, I understand, like, the pressure's on, like, you're getting ready to celebrate, and it's probably really tough with the lights and stuff to make that grab. We got to cover so much ground, and but it's just one of those things where the ball drops, and you give Oregon State new life, and they go on to win.
I don't know. I can't remember that player's name. I don't know where he's at now, but I imagine he probably still wakes up in a cold sweat occasionally thinking of that moment.
Oh yeah, especially around this time of year. So yeah, but I'm sure he's hoping that Arkansas is gonna win it all this year. They have a great team to do so.
Yeah. And that, you know what, that'll make it that much sweeter if they do win, because again, you've come close and had your heart broken before. And the favorites coming in, so we'll see if they can get that done. Coastal Carolina, despite being a mid-major team, not being treated as a Cinderella by any means. Kevin Schnall made that a point coming away from their super regional victory, this past week, and that, hey, we've been there, we've done that before, we won a national championship. Don't call us Cinderella. And when you kind of look at what they're bringing to the table, a team that is so good and consistent, and obviously has experience being in the College World Series for so good when it comes to pitching as well. They have some of the best numbers out of all the teams still left standing when it comes to the mound. So they may not go out there and win, games 10-9, but they might win some 3-2s.
Oh yeah, I mean, they've been great up to this point. I mean, they swept through their own regional, and they went to Auburn and swept the Tigers, who were a very dangerous team this year that a lot of people probably had going to the College World Series, and swept them out there in Plainsman Park. So I think Coastal's coming into this thing probably as the hottest team, just because even before postseason play started, I mean, they've won now 27 games in a row, and they have won 50 plus games this year and only have like 11 losses. Like, they are really dangerous. And yes, they're a mid-major, and there's actually two mid-majors. I forgot about them for a second there, and Murray State. But I think Coastal,
you don't think of them as a mid-major.
You don't think of Coastal as a mid-major in baseball, is right. And look, Coastal's been here and done that before. I mean, they won this thing in 2016, and they can certainly do it again. I think this team is more than capable of going out there and beating anyone that is in this field.
I think it's interesting, in talking about Coastal these past couple weeks, and Schnall's been on the early game, and they had Chance Miller on yesterday with Jay and Elijah. It's kind of a split, it seems like, with the audience on who's cheering for Coastal and who's not. And we had a lot of people actually pushing back the other day, like, no, that used to be USC Coastal. No way I'm cheering for them. Screw them and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's this consensus that everybody in the state's necessarily going to be cheering for them to win this whole thing.
Which I'm surprised. Like, is there really a rivalry between South Carolina and Coastal and stuff? I mean, Clemson I can understand, because the Clemson got beat by them twice this year. But South Carolina and Coastal don't play each other in baseball.
I think there's also a sense of because again, in the past 10 years, Coastal Carolinas have been the more successful baseball program in the state compared to South Carolina, compared to Clemson, compared to whoever. And I think if you saw them win another national championship where they would match your total and have done it all since the last time you even went to Omaha, I think that's an even poorer reflection on South Carolina as a program itself. So maybe that's where that comes from.
Yeah, and South Carolina is just in a mess right now. But, hey, maybe they're getting it cleaned up because they've had a nice little offseason.
how much do we believe in Murray State? Again, this has been the fun story. Again, they play at a 800 seat, if that stadium. Their coach cuts the grass. It's an underdog story. We don't see a whole lot make it this far. Again, only one of those 4 seasons ever won a national championship. They're only the 4th ever to make it this far. There is something to be said about a team with momentum and a hot hand, though.
I wouldn't be shocked if they go 2-Q. It would not shock me, just because that's probably how it should be. But that's not how college baseball works, and that's not how it's worked with Murray State this year. They've beaten some pretty good teams to get to this point. Obviously, they went to Duke for the Super Regional and beat them in best of 3 when they were down 0-1. And that's the other thing about Murray State. They've done this before now, where they've been in a hole on the verge of elimination, and they've handled their business and have been able to persevere. And we saw that in the Oxford Regional against Ole Miss as well. So I think Murray State, they play UCLA to start off this thing tomorrow. If they lose, I would not fully count them out yet. I think it is possible to go 2 and done, but I could also see a reality in which they win a game or 2. But going super far, I don't know. There's some pretty good teams in this field to where it's like Murray State is one of the last 2 or 3 standing. I'm going to be stunned.
Well, I'll say this, despite the fact we've not played any games yet, and we do get rolling later on this afternoon with Arizona and Coastal Carolina at 2 and Louisville and Oregon State at 7 out there in Omaha, the Racers faithful are making their impact known very, very quickly. They are currently, at last count, 2nd on the Rocco's Jello Shot Challenge board, behind LSU, who has 425. They have 385 shots consumed already. So they got to Omaha and quickly understood the assignment, it seems like.
Yeah, no, I mean, oh my gosh, this is one of the beauties of college baseball and Omaha, is just the Rocco's Jello Shot Challenge. And it's something that, again, never been to Omaha, so I do want to experience that someday. Hopefully South Carolina can get there so I can go cover them there. But yeah, that's not a surprise. I mean, LSU, have you seen the way they travel? I mean, it's gonna be very interesting to see how this does shake out, though. With UCLA is really slacking. You can see the West Coast.
Yeah, the West Coast teams are slow out of the gate. I also wonder as well, because again, there's just a lot of people in the Omaha area that go to this every single year. I wonder if they are giving some of their shots to Murray State, because I'm assuming when you order it, they ask you, okay, who are you for? What team are you supporting? So if I'm just an Omaha local and I like the Murray State story, heck yeah, give me 10 Jello shots and put them on Murray State.
Yeah, I mean, LSU's going to get theirs. Arkansas is going to get theirs. Coastal's had a lot of them so far, and so is Louisville. But yeah, it's like all the schools that are on the West Coast have gotten under 100, and Omaha, Nebraska's out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of Midwest, a little bit closer to the West Coast than it is coming from. Where's Murray State? Kentucky?
Yeah, Kentucky.
I mean, that's a far trip for the people here on the East Coast. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see how this goes.
Outside of the games, this is probably my favorite part of the College World Series, is following the week, and obviously as teams get eliminated, that kind of stuff. And I'm interested to see the numbers that Murray State can put up in their first appearance.
I mean, I'm trying to think back to the numbers from last year. I mean, I think Florida, I can't even remember how many they had. I'm pretty sure they won. We're talking like thousands and thousands of.
It gets up there. I mean, what you're there if you're there for over a week, and
you're there for 2 weeks.
You're 2 weeks, yeah. You have thousands upon thousands of people representing each school, and again, you can go back and buy more. So if you go there every single day and knock back 10 yourself, or however many, like. You know what I mean? Like it adds up quite a bit. I'm glad this is a thing. You know what I mean? Like that's what makes college sports so unique, is that you have a championship series in the middle of Nebraska, and there's this phenomenon about Jello shots. It's so perfect.
So are you ready to hear the record for Jello shots?
Yes, please. Let me know.
Just from one team, 2023 LSU. The team with Dylan Cruz, Paul Skeen.
Yep.
All the good players. 68,888 Jello shots.
Okay. How many total days is the World Series?
Gosh, it goes about 2 weeks. So and LSU was there the entire time. So
all right. So you said 68,000.
Yep, 888. So
888. So let's just go with a hard number of 14 days. That is an average of almost 5,000 Jello shots a day for LSU.
And I saw on here the Raising Cane's founder and CEO purchased 6,000 of them, but that's nothing compared to. That's
no,
literally one.
That's one day and some change.
Yeah. So
That's
point
phenomenal.
is, we're going to be seeing a lot of Jello shots here over the next 2 weeks.
And that's why we love college sports. Well, obviously, South Carolina hopes they can find themselves back in the College World Series in the coming years, and a lot of the responsibility falls on your resources and what you get via NIL and revenue sharing. And Jeremiah Donati spoke about that, as well as a number of other things yesterday with Jay and Elijah on the postgame show. We'll dive into a little bit of what he had to say coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler and Jack on your Friday here on the game. Tyler Ed here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. It is officially summertime, and guess what? That means there's going to be thunderstorms pretty much every single afternoon. If you have an open crawl space under your home and recently experienced a storm, you might need to make sure you don't have some standing water under there, because that can cause a litany of issues with your home. Things like high humidity and condensation can create mold, mildew, and invite pests like termites into your home, which obviously you don't want. And did you know that about half the air that you breathe in your home comes from your crawl space? You don't want to be breathing in nasty, moldy, mildewy, nasty air. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com. They'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation and crawl space issues and get them fixed right so you and your family can live comfortably going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler and Jack along with you here on your Friday on the game. Yesterday on the post-game show, we had Jeremiah Donati on once again for about half an hour. Got a lot of good insight into a number of different things as we get set to enter this new era of revenue sharing going live on July the 1st, where schools for the first time ever will be able to directly pay athletes out of that $20.5 million budget divided up between the different athletic teams here at South Carolina. He did mention that, he's not going to necessarily discuss how that money's divvied up from a percentages standpoint, but pretty easy to kind of figure out based on what we've seen from some other schools on how exactly each team is going to receive their funds and how much of those funds they'll receive. And one thing that's, I think, really important that he talked about is keeping coaches content when it comes to the respective shares that their individual sports have. And this is what he had to say about that yesterday on the postgame show with Jay and Elijah.
Yeah, that's a great question, Elijah. So here's the way I would put it, and I probably misspoke when I said all of our coaches are happy. I think they're content because any coach would tell you that they want more, they should want more. But the reality is when you're playing with a hard cap, which we are for the first time ever, it's a zero-sum game. So I give to men's basketball, I take away from this sport. I give to women's basketball, I take away from that sport. I give to football. There's only so many resources that could go around, so you've got to find, a mixture that makes sense, and you've got to kind of determine where the program is. Is it a program you need to put more resources behind because, maybe you were lagging? Obviously, football is going to be we're going to kind of start there, and every school that has a football program that wants to be competitive is going to start there. You've got to feed the beast. It's not breaking news or a shocker that football's paying the bills, and it's paying by a long shot. So you've got to make sure that you keep that program healthy and they've got what they need. But you've also got to find a way to strike the balance. I tell you this, you want to keep your coaches content and competitive. It's just impossible. It's going to be impossible to do it perfectly because there's always going to be one coach that says, hey, this school is doing more, these schools are doing more, and they're not wrong. There's always going to be one school that's doing a little bit more in some sport because that's a sport they've identified they can either be more competitive in or they've got a bigger tradition in or whatever the case may be. And I think the best example I could give you is some of these traditional basketball powerhouses. You've heard that some of these are taking maybe a little bit less on the football side to feed the basketball side. So those are just decisions that institutions are going to have to make. I think on one hand, it's kind of exciting to think that people can make those decisions. And of course, that's, irrespective of any future rule changes or legal challenges. But I think it's a good thing for schools to be able to decide what they want to do.
And, it's one thing right now as we're not even in this thing yet. Again, July 1st is when it gets rolling, and football will be the first sport to actually be taking place under this new era. It's one thing to say coaches are content right now as you're planning this thing out. But I mentioned it, and football is not going to have to worry because they're going to get a majority of the share anyway. But I think about men's basketball. I think about baseball, women's basketball, softball now, obviously. When one sport is looking at another that may be struggling and saying, hey, why are they getting X amount of stuff and we're only getting Y amount when we should be getting a little bit more and they should be getting a little bit less because we're a better program? At some point, I would have to think those conversations do start coming up when you start looking at the individual performances of these sports.
Oh, totally. And again, football, as he mentioned, as we all know, is going to get majority of this pie. This theoretical pie of the $20.5 million, a good amount of it is going to football. And then you're trying to figure out how to divvy up. It's like you have one slice left and you're trying to figure out how you're going to divvy up a slice and cut it up evenly for the rest of the sports. And that's tough. I mean, it's tough that most money is going to football because, if you want to have a competitive football team, you got to have money poured in because, again, football does pay the bills. So I'm not sure exactly how you do it with the other sports. You have to consider men's basketball will make you some money. Now, when the team was not good this year, we'll see how that number looks. But you go back to 2 years ago, they were making a profit. And then you have to look at women's basketball, baseball, softball. Those sports all operate at a loss. So you kind of need to – women's basketball needs the money to keep things going the way they are, obviously. Baseball has gotten a lot of money from the athletics department, as what Jeremiah said.
Sure.
And they've been able to get a lot more players out of the transfer portal because of that. So we'll see, but it's going to definitely change a lot of things, I think, where you might have this come up at some point. It's only inevitable that someone's not going to be happy down the road.
And I almost wonder, and every university is going to handle this differently, so I'm not necessarily saying South Carolina is going to do this, but when you look at your other sports outside of your main cash cow, which is football, do you almost kind of, go off like performance metrics over a period of time, saying, like, all right, well, if you don't meet these certain goals after 3 years, we're going to adjust and we're going to take a little bit away from you and give it to this sport that is doing better. And like those kind of things, like you almost kind of set goals for each sport for them to accomplish. And if they're not there, maybe you take a little bit away, maybe you add more because they need more help. Like there's a lot of different ways you can go with this because, again, there's not a, I guess, one universal way that every school is going to do this, I feel like.
Yeah, there's not going to be a universal way. Like think about the basketball schools that are out there that really are not good at football. Like what's Kentucky going to do? Kentucky is not going to invest as much in basketball as they should compared to football. Like yes, they're going to be donating a lot in basketball here, but you think about that with other schools too that are kind of in that same situation. Then at South Carolina, I kind of get what you're saying about the performance-based manner in which this should go. I don't think you should take money away from a sport just because they're not performing, because for whatever reason, maybe it is because they don't have enough resources, or maybe the competition in the rest of the conference is just really stiff and it's just tough to win every single year. I'm not sure. So I don't think taking money away is the ideal thing. I think you keep the money where it's at, but maybe don't give them more. Maybe they do need more resources, though.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes tricky, is like you don't have a ton of money to probably play with in that way because we don't know how much money football can be getting of this whole thing.
Sure.
But you can imagine it's quite a bit, and it's like, how do you kind of divvy it up for everyone else?
Yeah, and again, we're kind of spitballing here because there's no exact science to this, and we're all kind of learning as it goes along, but I can't imagine every coach is always going to be completely content with what their program is getting when you're looking around at your, fellow programs within the university saying, maybe not saying out loud, but thinking to yourself like, we had, that budget, we could be doing this, or if they had less, then they'd be fine, or something along those lines. Like those conversations and thoughts will eventually crop up at some point. No, but it's not going to be kumbaya forever. You know what I mean?
No, because at the end of the day, money talks, and money is how you're able to get players to come to your schools more times than not. You can say whatever you want about the culture and the family atmosphere and just playing for a good team and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, you're coming to here to get paid, and that is the new reality of college athletics. And we're seeing that now, and that's what we're going to be seeing in the future. And it may be tough to meet the demands of every single athlete that is interested in coming here, but I think if done correctly, I think South Carolina could really have a successful run with a lot of these different sports like they have been before NIL and all this even came into effect.
Well, Jeremiah Donati's at the helm to usher us into this new era, which again goes live on July the 1st. It is Father's Day weekend, and on the 107.5 The Game Facebook page, running through tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we're holding a contest where if you can correctly guess the baby photos of ourselves, all the on-air staff here at the game, you could win yourself the grand prize of a craft beer card, which is valued at $275, and a family 4-pack of tickets to go see the Columbia Fireflies, or the second prize, which is the $75 gift certificate to Brooklyn's Banquet and Conference Center. Again, go to 107.5 The Game's Facebook page and correctly guess all of our younger photos to win one of those prizes. If we have a tie at the top, there will be a random drawing to determine who gets the overall prize. So again, that's running through tomorrow at 7 p.m. on the 107.5 The Game Facebook page. Jack, I think Joe Flacco is entering his angry old man era because he's been a quote machine this week, and we'll dive into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Beltry on your Friday here on The Game.
Everyone around here knows that AAA Heating and Air has the best HVAC replacement options in the Midlands. With their guaranteed financing, no payments or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty, they're tough to beat when you need a new system. But what if your system just needs a repair? Well, AAA has something for you too. If you're strapped for cash, they offer up to 12-month payment plans with no credit check on repair services. Yep, that's right. No credit check required. So all you need is just to have a valid bank account and own your home. That's it. So whether you're replacing or repairing, AAA Heating and Air has you covered. Call today and get your comfort back. You'll be glad you did.
Even when it got easier in like 2011, I think, everybody that was playing at that point had been through two-a-days at some point in their life. Guys that come in the NFL now have never done it. They've never done it. We're out there for an hour and 15 minutes and guys think it's hard. You know, like our OTAs were over 2 hours for sure.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Belcher with you on your Friday here on the game. That was the voice of current Browns quarterback Joe Flacco talking about his younger teammates and them them complaining about the length of OTA workouts, which apparently are just a tick over an hour. And him basically saying y'all wouldn't have survived 2-a-days back in the day. Because, again, he's been in the league since 2008. I was talking about this with Terry earlier, who, of course, is from Baltimore, very familiar with Joe Flacco. I feel like Joe Flacco has never really said anything of substance in his entire NFL career. He's been just kind of a basic, quarterback. You get the same generic quotes, 1-0 mentality, trying to win, trying to be better, trying to make my teammates better, all those kind of things. It's like he almost flipped a switch this week because he's been a quote machine.
Yeah, no, he is. He's not wrong necessarily. Number one, about that quote he had to say about the younger players complaining about an hour. If you're actually complaining about an hour, 15-minute preseason, well, not even preseason, but just an OTA.
Yeah,
that's a real issue right there.
Which is the lightest amount of work you're going to do on a football field the entire year.
Exactly. Like, what are you complaining about? And yeah, 2-a-days are not fun from playing football and stuff. But yeah, I mean, look, he's 40 years old now. He's probably on his grandpa era here. I mean, think about it. He's in the same quarterback room with Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Like, we're talking about two guys that probably were like kids when Joe was just starting out in the league.
I'm thinking about this. So he came in 2008, which would have been 17 years ago, which is crazy. So, yeah, like Dylan and Shedeur, 4 to 5 years old at that point in time.
Let's see. How old? These guys are probably like a year or two younger than me. Let's see. Shedeur's 23. So he was born in 2002. So he would have been about 6 years old.
Yeah.
And then Gabriel's also old too. He actually might be my age.
That's true. So he might have been like 7 or so.
Yeah, Gabriel, 24 years old. Gosh, yeah,
wow.
He's a little younger than me. So,
but still,
still. I mean, we're talking about like, do you even remember watching football when you're that young? I certainly don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I understand where Joe's coming from, but the NFL is not what it used to be in terms of like. It's the same game for the most part. Well, in terms of the players and stuff and their mindset mentality, it's not the 2000s or 90s anymore. Those days are long, long gone. Not
to be outdone, he also apparently is not a fan of his teammates and dancing on TikTok. And here's what he had to say about that.
You're not going to do the dance on TikTok then?
No TikTok dances. The fact that people, that is different too. This generation, the fact that people want to get on their phones and show people the most, like, that's embarrassing. You're an adult. Like, be an adult. Like, it's just like, I can't wrap my head around that. And like, I get it. Like, you have kids and like, you want to have fun with your kids. Like, well, like, have fun with your kids in private. You know, that's what I think.
Does that make you more guarded, Joe?
I'm not guarded. I don't think I'm guarded at all. I think, honestly, if you talk to me in person, I'll tell you a lot. I'll be pretty honest with you. But, like, yeah, on social media, no chance. No chance. Just part of me, there's a piece of me at times that, like, gosh, should I be this guy that kind of, like, does this a little bit? Like, because I feel like in order to have a good social media, you do want to be honest and, like, show what you do in your life. But it's just like, that's a job.
For one, I love brutally honest Joe Flacco. Like, where's this guy been for the past 17 years? But he's definitely getting to that old man yells at cloud kind of range pretty quickly, because we've already got back in my day, you wouldn't have survived 2-a-days, and I don't understand this fancy newfangled tic-tac or whatever you call it that you're dancing on. You're an adult. Grow up.
You know, I'm kind of with him on that, because it's like, I mean, you are like, I see adults dancing on TikTok all the time, and I'm just like, you do you. That is perfectly fine. If that's also, some of these people are making a living off of doing stuff like that, which I find insane. Yeah. But like, if that's what you're doing and you want to do it, more power to you. You do you. But I understand Joe's sentiment, and like, you're a full grown adult and you're doing these. I think they're cringy, to be honest, and I don't think it's something I would ever personally do, but. That's not my kind of TikTok content either, is the whole dancing and stuff. So there's better uses, I would say.
Oh, maybe he's a really bad dancer and this is his way of covering up so nobody asks him to do it.
Oh yeah, I wonder what a Joe Flacco touchdown celebration looks like. Does he? I honestly can't remember. Like, does he spike the ball? Does he just go nuts? I mean, or does he just sit there and be chill guy?
You know, I honestly can't remember. I don't think there's anything significant. I don't think he has like a thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just your generic, hey, high five, maybe a headbutt or something like that, going to the back to the sidelines. I don't think Flacco has like a thing that he does.
Yeah, I don't. He doesn't seem like the type of guy who has a thing. He just probably flips the ball to the ref and moves on. But yeah, he's definitely the old man of the NFL now, and it's crazy. 17 years. I don't think many people thought that'd be the case. Especially after his Ravens days were done.
Do you think, assuming Shador plays at some point this year and does his little Rolex watch thing, do you think he'll have a problem with that?
Who, Joe Flacco?
Yeah, Joe.
If they're scoring touchdowns, I don't think so. But I think the mentality for Joe is probably like, if you score a touchdown, you can do whatever you want. You can do all your little TikTok dances and all that fun stuff. Do whatever you want. Just play good football, and the rest will take care of itself.
So, at what week are we expecting? Because I'm assuming Flacco's going to start the season because he's obviously the most experienced guy in that room. But like, he's not going to play the entire year. Like, at what point do the Browns decide, okay, let's try, whether it be Shador Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, let's give Kenny Pickett another shot? Like, at what point do they say, all right, Joe, come put on a headset on the sidelines?
Yeah, and I don't think we're seeing Kenny Pickett play at all. That would be, oh my gosh. I'd rather just see the other two guys play over him. But yeah, I think, this is a Browns team that I'm not sure how they're going to be this year. I mean, I don't know where they're projected at the moment. Like, I'm
probably pretty low.
Yeah, probably pretty low. So I'd say if the Browns are pretty much like off to a terrible start and Joe's just not playing well, it's easier to pull the plug and probably put someone else in. I think it just depends on how things go here in camp. Also, one of these two rookies could have a great preseason and potentially win the job. We'll see what happens. But I mean, Joe is not your long-term answer anymore. He's 40. I mean, after that 11-5 season where the Browns got to the playoffs and he, was in contention for comeback player of the year, I think that was probably it. Like that, like you're not riding on him to be your guy for the next 5-10 years. That's why you have two rookie quarterbacks in there, and you can also, I guess, count Kenny Pickett in there too. So I'd say probably by midseason, probably see something if the Browns are not very good.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because like Joe Flacco's not Trent Dilfer, but like he was never like a superstar when he was the full-time starter in Baltimore either. He obviously had really good postseason runs, like the one that won the Super Bowl. But I mean, he was pretty darn turnover prone through his entire NFL career, and that's still prevalent to this day. But like, he was a good quarterback, but he was never thought of as like elite. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about Joe Flacco, I mean, I don't know how we necessarily really look at it. Like, I don't think he's obviously, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer by any stretch.
I don't know. I think, well, again, I say that Trent Dilfer doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but I think for his how long he was the quarterback for the Ravens and winning a Super Bowl, probably, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, he's got, if it weren't for the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl MVP, I think it'd be a lot easier to be like, yeah, he's not a Hall of Famer, but like, maybe, I don't know. I just don't feel like he has the accolades besides comeback player of the year and Super Bowl MVP. That's really it, to be honest.
That Super Bowl carries a lot of weight, though. I mean, there's a lot. I don't think Matt Ryan's ever going to. Matt Ryan may not be a Hall of Famer because he didn't win a Super Bowl, but Joe Flacco maybe because he did. Like, it's that valuable.
Which is crazy because when we've looked at Flacco, probably since Baltimore, 18 was his last year. He's bounced around the league ever since. I mean, he had that great year with the Browns a few years ago, but I mean, I don't know. Are we really talking about him being in the Hall of Fame? I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll see. But again, he's earning a check by being the stand-in until one of the younger guys is good enough to go in. And hey, that's not a bad gig to live, to get paid $4 million a year to do that, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's still out here at 40 doing it, so he's doing something right.
We'll come back and wrap up hour number one. It is Friday the 13th. How superstitious are we? We'll dive into that coming up next. It's the Extra Point, Tyler Head and Jack Beltry, along with you on your Friday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyrett and Jack Veltri wrapping up hour number 1. Get a double dose of Jack today, back at 11 as well. Wes and Chris just don't like to come in anymore, I guess.
No, they don't. And lucky for you, I am available today. So
They would much rather go out there and watch these kids in camp.
Yep, they'd rather sit there in probably like 90-degree temperatures, sun baking out there at Williams Rice, and yeah.
Oh, well, that is their job, I guess. So I'll let this slide for now. Yeah. Today, and we'll talk to Chris coming up at 11:15 about what's going on out there and kind of looking ahead to some other things as well. Today is Friday the 13th. What's your mileage on superstitions? Like extreme, none, somewhere in the middle?
Somewhere in the middle. I don't think too much of Friday the 13th. Like, I know other people do, and that's fine. That's your own prerogative. But for me, I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal, to be honest. When
you were playing sports, was there any kind of ritual or superstitious thing you did?
I don't think so. I try to just stick to the same habits. I think that if you want to count that as a superstition, just try not to change that up. But other than that, that's really it, to be honest.
I'm extremely superstitious in like,
how so?
Oh my God, just about every single facet of life. You know what I mean? Like if I have like a bad day or something goes wrong on a day and I'm like, okay, I was wearing those shoes that day. I have a pair of bad luck shoes. I have a shirt from years ago that is bad luck. I have hats that I've deemed to be bad luck because of things that happened when I was wearing them. Like this affects my daily life. I'm not kidding.
I will say the one time I actually do get pretty superstitious is whenever my sports teams are doing well.
Yep.
And there's something to it. Like if I'm wearing like an outfit, watching a game or whatever.
Yep.
I'm like, especially in the playoffs.
Sure.
I'm wearing that outfit every other game of the postseason. I'm sitting in the same seat.
Yep.
I do that for sports teams in the playoffs typically. But other than that, like that's really when I get superstitious. Like everything must remain the same throughout the playoffs if that's the case.
Oh, I think that goes for majority of people. I'm the same way. I've changed clothes. I change where I'm sitting. If I'm holding something in my hand and a good play happens, I'll continue to hold that thing in my hand until something bad happens. Like there used to be a Bud Light commercial back in the day called about superstitions, and they were playing Superstitious by Stevie Wonder, and the tagline at the end was, "It's only weird if it doesn't work," which I fully believe.
No, exactly. Yeah, like it's only weird if it doesn't work. Like you see people do like the rally. Were you ever a rally cap guy?
Yes, actually. In fact, I had a little league team where we rallied back from 8 runs down in the bottom of the final inning to win, and we all had the rally cap thing going. And I don't think our coach understood it because he was getting upset with us for doing it, but it worked.
If it works, it works. You can't question it if it works. I mean, you see teams out there do these silly little things like the rally monkey and the rally squirrel and all that. But and the rally caps are just another thing that's, I don't even know how long that thing's been going on, but it works sometimes.
Now, if you like spill salt on the table, what do you do?
Ooh, spill salt on the table?
Yeah, that's bad luck too.
It is?
You didn't know that? Yeah, if you spill salt, you're supposed to toss it over your shoulder.
Oh, shoot. I spill salt all the time, so.
You better start throwing it over your shoulder to avoid bad luck.
Yeah, throw it over my shoulder and then sweep it up off the ground.
Yeah,
that sounds great.
You don't worry about where it goes. You just throw it over your shoulder to avoid the bad luck.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. I really learned something right there. I'm going to do that now.
All right, man. Well, I'll see you in about an hour.
Yeah, man. I'll see you soon.
All right, coming up next, hour number 2, we'll run the numbers with Corey Parson, look at some NFL win totals, and also the latest odds on the NBA Finals up next here on The Game. 10 o'clock, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on the game. It is 10 o'clock, and that means it's time to run the numbers with our guy Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network. Corey, how are we doing today?
Hey, Tyler, what's going on? Glad to be talking to you guys on a nice Saturday morning. Been a lot of rain down here in the Midlands this week, but, pushing through the summertime, getting ready for all the sports that we have coming up in the fall. So looking forward to it, and hopefully we can make everybody a couple dollars.
Yeah, we're 79 days away from South Carolina kicking off its season, so man, we're inching closer. And every time I get to talk to you, that means we are 7 days closer. So only 11 more conversations before we get to the season.
That'd be fun. Sounds good to me. I don't mind counting down with you.
Yeah, sounds good. Certainly got some numbers to get into here from the latest on the BetMGM Network, and we'll get into the NFL and kind of look at the NFC South here in just a moment. But wanting to start off with obviously what's going on with the NBA Finals as of right now. Indiana out to a surprising 2-1 lead through 3 games so far as game number 4 coming up later on tonight on ABC. All that being said, Thunder's still currently the favorite as the series hits about its halfway point.
Yeah, Thunder's still a 2-1 favorite in the series. If you was able to get in on Indiana last week, around this time, you was able to really get the best of the number all before the series started. As of right now, sitting at Indiana plus 275, despite them having a lead. So we're still seeing some of the sharper bettors come in on the Oklahoma City Thunder, thinking that they're going to be able to, possibly pull this out. But as I said last week, if you took that number with Indiana and Oklahoma City still does win this series, you're going to be in pretty good position regardless to possibly cash tickets on both sides. Once this series gets to about 6 games, which is definitely going to go now, you're going to be able to hedge against your Indiana Pacers bet. And people that got in on the Pacers at that big number at plus 475 last week, they're sitting with a pretty nice ticket right now. And obviously, the way Tyrese Halliburton is playing and Rick Carlisle is coaching, you got to be feeling pretty good that maybe you won't even have to hedge.
So coming away from game number 3, going back for the past 40 years, roughly 80% of teams that have a 2-1 lead go on to typically win the series. Again, it's only 1 game difference, so if the Thunder knotted up, tonight, then they could certainly get that momentum back on their side. If Indiana were to win game number 4 tonight and get out to a 3-1 lead, which is not impossible to overcome, we've seen it done before, but is definitely a tough hill to climb, how much might you anticipate that number changes going into game number 5?
It could possibly flip if that's the case, Tyler. Then I could see Indiana being the $2 favorite, and you're really sitting in a pretty spot right now if you got the best of that number. And at that point, you come back and maybe you sprinkle something on the Oklahoma City Thunder. If you're not a fan and you want to play it both ways and try to make some money off it. But I think if you do see them go up 3-1, you'll see a massive flip in the book. Even though you said it has been done in Oklahoma City, they were the best team in the league this year. But hey, Indiana got going late, and they're playing very good basketball right now.
So, again, game number 4 coming up tonight, and it's been a fun series so far. Obviously, the comeback in game number 1 and a nice spirited game the other night that Indiana ended up pulling out in the win. So, it should be fun to see how that series continues. Excuse me. Again, transitioning over to football now, we take a look at the NFC South, which, Corey, to say the least, this has been the butt of the joke when it comes to most of the NFL, especially in the NFC these past couple years. Typically, your worst division winner comes from this rank and hasn't really gotten all that far in the past handful of years since Tampa Bay did win that Super Bowl with Tom Brady.
Yeah, NFC South kind of on hard times right now. You look at some of the quarterbacks in the division. You look at some of the coaching decisions and changes in the division. I mean, you look at some of the ownership in the division. Not to be pointing at the team up the road, but the NFC South has been on tough times, as you said. So this is a division that's probably only going to take a champion, even though you could possibly sneak 2 teams in there, depending on what happens in the NFC East and the NFC West. The East, you figure, would have a runaway winner. The West can be kind of tight this year. Maybe we'll talk about that and discuss that next week. But the South feels like a one-team show, and sometimes you would anticipate maybe even 2 or 3 teams to come out the NFC North.
That's a really good point that you bring up. It was not all that long ago that the NFC South had quarterbacks like Cam Newton and Matt Ryan and Drew Brees, and it's definitely a difference today when you talk about, Michael Penix Jr., obviously Bryce Young, Baker Mayfield, and I guess Tyler Shuck when it comes to the New Orleans Saints. Like the night and day difference between where this league was 10 years ago at quarterbacks and today is crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw MVP come out the NFC South like you said, about a decade ago. And now you're seeing quarterbacks trying to find their footing, a guy like Baker Mayfield revitalizing his career, and then obviously the situation in New Orleans. We don't even know what's going on. Hopefully, listen, I don't mind I don't think Spencer Rattler played bad last year, so I don't mind giving him a shot and seeing what he can do out there. But New Orleans is a team that is a team that people think is not destined to do that well this season.
Let's take a look at some of these win totals when it comes to the NFC South. We'll start with the local team here of the Carolina Panthers. Year number 3 under Bryce Young at quarterback. Obviously, Dave Canales going into his second year as the head coach there. You saw them get better last year towards the end of the season once Bryce Young came off the bench after Andy Dalton got hurt. So the hope is that he takes a significant step forward in year number 3 as a starter. Second, I guess, full year as a starter is what the anticipation is. They go out there, they get Teteroa McMillan as a first-round draft pick, kind of expected to be that X-receiver. They can go up there and get some of those high-pointed balls and contested catches. Brought in a lot of guys via free agency when it comes to the defense and trying to make themselves more competitive. And that's the thing about the NFC South. With how down the league has been, it doesn't take a whole lot to get yourself back into the race for the division championship.
Yeah, and the Carolina Panthers have a good chance to be in that race this year. Right now, that number sitting at 6.5. If Bryce Young can continue to show the improvement he showed towards the end of last season, I mean, this is still a pretty good roster. You still got good players on defense. Offense has some good players as well. This is a team that's been drafting at the top of the draft for a couple of years. It's just kind of the ownership group and the way the organization is run has been able to slow them down. The constant changes in head coaches also doesn't make anything better. But this 6.5 right now is juiced to the over at -135. So the general public, which right now is the sharper better, feels the sense that if the Carolina Panthers are at least going to be a 7-win team this year. So that means when you look at Carolina on a Sunday-to-Sunday basis, if they come in as an underdog, there's a good chance that you should probably have them on your tickets because Carolina is a team that people think can compete in the division this year.
Again, talking to Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network because they run the numbers each and every week, looking at win totals in the NFC South. We'll go to the very, very bottom here next, that being the New Orleans Saints. Of course, Derek Carr retiring just a couple weeks ago after the litany of injuries he's had these past couple years. Again, it seems like Tyler Shuck is going to be the starter, but Spencer Rattler's going to be in the mix there, as is Jay Kaner. But this is a team that pretty much nobody's expecting anything out of this year as they are reassessing, retooling. Obviously, Kellen Moore going into his first season as the head coach down there and seeing if they can kind of rebuild what was once a great and storied organization.
Excuse me, Tyler. Yeah, this win total right here is actually, the over is actually +185. I've never seen anything like this before. People tend to think that the New Orleans Saints may be the worst team in the league this year. You look at the quarterback situation, you look at an aging roster, you look at a team that just doesn't seem like people can get their hands around. Now, the win total being set at 6.5 kind of shows you what the market thinks of their division. They think that these teams are more evenly matched than you would think they'd be. New Orleans having a bad schedule last year, firing the coach. Obviously, they're going to have one of the easier schedules to go at it this year. But the public are nobody sharp. Nobody's buying into this number. People think this is a 5-win team, a 6-win team, maybe even a 4-win team. I'm going to give Kellen Moore a little bit more credit than that. With that being said, listen, I'm not really big on guys like these mastermind play callers taking over and becoming head coaches, like how people are so excited about Ben Johnson. Well, Ben Johnson can get you a first down, but can he coach a football team? I think when you look at Kellen Moore and some of the stops he's had and head coaches he's been with, I think Kellen Moore is going to do a fine job. I think 6 wins is about it, though. That win total of 7 seems a little bit high high to me, and the public thinks so as well. If you like 7, you got a real nice price to it, plus 185.
Second best win total in the division goes to the Atlanta Falcons, sitting at 7.5 as of right now. Michael Penix Jr. will go into his first full year as a starter. They addressed a lot of needs on defense defense this past draft cycle, particularly when it comes to getting after the quarterback and rushing the passer with Jalen Walker and guys like James Pierce. Signed some free agents as well. So year number 2 of Penix in this starting role is going to be interesting to see and see if Raheem Morris can get this team back to the top of the division.
Yeah, it's very interesting when you look at the Atlanta Falcons. They are a middle-of-the-pack NFL team, and it seems like that's where they always are, kind of the middle in the NFL. You feel as if there's enough pieces on this roster to make the jump, but we really haven't seen the cohesion with coaching yet and getting the roster to do what it's supposed to do. So at 7.5, once again, you say, okay, this is an 8-win team. Well, it's juiced to minus 145, so the public and the sharps agree with that. But that really balances because of the division. They're thinking you're going to be able to get wins in the division. Penix showed some flashes last year. Really still don't know what he is, though. So it's going to be interesting to see how this situation plays out for the Falcons. I'll be honest with you, not a number that I would go to the window with on the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know what this team is. To me, I take a wait-and-see approach on Atlanta this year.
And last one here, again, they've been the standard of the league, of the division the past couple of years. It's not saying much overall, but somebody does have to win it at the end of the day. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, once again, favored pretty heavily, or the highest win total, it seems, when it comes to going into the season to try and win yet another NFC South crown at 9.5.
Yep, 10 wins for the for the Buccaneers. Probably about minus 105 is where the juice is at right now. Me and most of the people say this is a 9-win team that could win the division. They kind of be in the same spot they are last year as a division winner, host a wild card playoff game, and lose. So basically that's what they're saying it is. This is a nod to the strength of the quarterback and kind of the consistency of the organization over the past couple of years. They are just a notch better than Atlanta and Carolina. That's basically what it is for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. One injury, though, and this division could flip upside down. So when you look at the division winners, you know what? Taking a flyer on a team like Carolina may not be a bad idea, because if Baker Mayfield was to go down, this thing is totally different right now. The division becomes wide open for anybody except for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, definitely so. And again, it's a league that's kind of been at the bottom of the NFL for a while, but at some point that switch does have to flip, and we'll see if some of these younger quarterbacks can kind of take it to the next level as we go forward here starting in 2025. Corey, appreciate your time as always, and we'll have some more numbers to run next week.
All right, thank you, sir.
And Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network, as we run the numbers each and every Friday at 10 o'clock. Again, 2 days ago, we had some interesting news from South Carolina's point in the transfer portal, where they added Isaiah Auguste out of Colorado to add to the running back room. Yesterday, myself and Terry Ford spoke with Adam Munstertiger of Buff Stampede, which is the 24/7 sports site for the Colorado Buffaloes, and he gave us some insight into what we can expect from Isaiah Auguste, and we'll hit that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game. Again, just the other day, we had Isaiah Augustave join the South Carolina football team via the transfer portal to add to the running back room that we still don't quite know what it's going to look like without the ruling on Rasul Faison just yet. But yesterday, myself and Terry Ford on the halftime show did talk to Adam Munstertiger of Buff Stampede, who covers the Colorado Buffaloes for 24/7 Sports, about Isaiah Augustave and what kind of ads South Carolina did get to their running back room. We start off by asking him his overall thoughts of seeing Augustave leave and end up at South Carolina.
Yeah, no, it's great to be on with you guys. I did a story at the beginning of this offseason about 10 Buffalo players that were primed to really make a big jump and be focal points of the Colorado program in 2025. And number one on that list was Isaiah Augustave. I was impressed with him. Obviously, Colorado as a team really struggled to run the football. They, the last 2 years, ranked dead last in the FBS ranks in terms of rushing offense, but it goes beyond kind of Isaiah Augustave's talent. Obviously, he was dealing with some injuries last year, and when he was out there, he was pretty productive. I thought he was Colorado's best running back when he was out there last year. And I thought that going back to his first camp last August with the Buffaloes as a transfer from Arkansas, and I was kind of questioning, some folks that I know in the program that, like, why is Augustave not number one on the depth chart here? And at that point, it was that he was having issues putting the football on the ground. He was fumbling during camp and get early in the season against Colorado State. He told then running backs coach Gary Harrell that, hey, that's not going to happen again. It didn't the rest of the season. So that was an area that was a struggle for him last year that he got better at. But as a 6'2", 210 back, usually those guys sometimes can be, targets to not be able to get that extra yard or two because they're kind of a bigger target. But one of the things that really impressed me about Augustave was just the fact that he was able to get that extra yard or two every time he would hit contact. So he was a loss for Colorado's program and certainly somebody that should have a nice career there at South Carolina.
Hey, Adam, thanks for doing this again on such short notice. When I look at Augustave's numbers through his time at Colorado and Arkansas prior to that, nothing really that jumps off the page at you that's really going to wow you. But I know that both Colorado and Arkansas had bad offensive lines, to say the least, in his 2 seasons in college so far. How much do you feel like Colorado's line held him back last year for what he could have potentially done with maybe some better blocking up front?
Yeah, there's no question that Colorado's offensive line struggled last season. But honestly, I would put it more on just a philosophical situation going on offensively. You had Shedeur Sanders at quarterback and 4 receivers that are now, trying their hand at the NFL. And so you were going 10 personnel a lot. And they just, as much as they would, every time the media members, myself included, would ask these coaches about trying to be more well-balanced in getting that ground game going, you never saw that consistently on Saturdays. And so it was really hard for any running back to get into a rhythm. And so for Augustave, I would say it's more about opportunity. That first year at Arkansas, he had over, I think it was 101 yards in one game. And he definitely is a guy that could develop into a feature back in a Power 4 conference program. But at this point, it's more about the potential than it is about what's on paper in terms of what's proven. But I think you take a chance on somebody like that. And I would be surprised if Augustave, and I talked to him about this last year. His motivation is his little girl. He's got a daughter. And so he is somebody that's maturing pretty quickly. And I would be surprised if he's not somebody that's heavily in the mix there as far as the running back rotation with the Gamecocks.
Adam Munstertiger hanging out with us from 24/7 Sports here on the halftime show on The Game as we talk football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Adam, when we take a look a little bit more into the numbers of Augusta, a lot of damage was done between the tackles. Not a lot of long runs in his opportunities that he did have. Give us a little rundown on Augusta. We know he has a lot of yards after contact. We saw that. Is he more of a guy that, again, more workmanlike between the tackles, a guy that's not going to break a lot of big plays? Or give us a little bit of the running style for Augusta.
Yeah, first off, with him, you got to talk about, I mentioned the fumble issues. It seems like he's improved from that. Pass protection is an area that he's improved in. As far as just a straight-up runner, I think if you give Isaiah Augusta 20 carries, against most teams, he's going to get over that 100-yard barrier. He's pretty consistent. He just has not really gotten that consistent effort back from the coaches, right? And I talked about that with the play calling at Colorado last year. There were so many of us that kind of saw his talents that were clamoring for him to have that 20-yard, that 20-carry game, and see what that would manifest itself into. So he's a big back. He can run through contact. He knows when to lower the shoulders at the right time, and so he should be somebody that folks out there enjoy watching the next few years. He's still, again, a little bit of an unproven commodity from a consistency standpoint because he hasn't gotten that opportunity, so anxious to see what he does with it if he does get it there at South Carolina.
Caught a few balls out of the backfield last year, but not a huge part of the offense. When it came to the air game, what can you tell us about his hands, and is there potential for that to be improved upon?
Yeah, they didn't do a whole lot with the running backs in the passing game. They like I said earlier, there were 10 personnel with 4 guys that are now in the NFL playing receiver. So they didn't utilize that position a ton out of the backfield. He did catch a few passes and was fine in that area. I wouldn't be able to give a full breakdown on that just because we don't have the sample size of it at Colorado. But that was never something when I heard about the fumble issues and, sometimes maybe pass protection stuff. I never heard anything about him being a liability in terms of being a pass catcher out of the backfield.
All right, Adam. Obviously, you got a head coach. A few people know who he is in Coach Prime, or I guess you just call him Coach Prime, not Coach Sanders, Coach Deion. What's it like now covering Deion Sanders on a daily basis? Is it as much fun or as compelling as we think, or is it not what the outside world would believe?
Well, I would say that he runs a more traditional program than most people think because they get the sound bites from press conferences. As a beat member, I have less contact with the head coach than I have had in 23 years covering Colorado, but every time we get a chance to be around Deion Sanders, like he's got kind of this on-camera persona, and he's also got kind of a different persona off camera, and I've been impressed with him as a human being. There's a lot of drama that comes along with this coverage, especially with the Shador draft slide and everything we've dealt with as far as that goes. But I would say it's actually less dramatic on a day-to-day basis than a lot of people think. I've been impressed with his ability to connect with people, and he's dealing with a health issue right now. And you hear people in the building that know how to run this operation without him, but he definitely is, a different type of head coach at the FBS level, but not to the point where he's really old school, I guess is what I'm getting down to. He is going to demand a lot of these guys, and you've seen guys get kicked out of the program that just were not doing the right thing. So there's more disciplinary stuff going on in the program than I think sometimes what gets shown on social media.
This just hit me. We only got like 30 seconds, but there for a while we saw a lot of famous folks going on that campus watching games. Who did you see that was like a famous person? You went, well, what the hell are they doing here? To what level of celebrity have you seen running around for Colorado games in the Deion era?
Well, I got to give The Rock a fist bump. That was pretty cool. I'm not going to lie.
That's hard to beat.
Has your hand hurt? Did he break your hand?
No, he was pretty chill with it. I think I was not. I was more enthused to see him than he was to see me. That.
You mean he didn't go back to his people? I just saw Adam Munster Tiger. You would not believe that.
I'm sure he did.
Adam Munster Tiger from 24/7 Sports covers the Colorado Buffaloes. Thanks a lot for giving us a little insight on the new running back here at South Carolina. Appreciate you, man.
Of course, guys. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Friday. Time to check in with our guy, Joe Machika, as we do each and every Friday. How are we doing today, Joe?
Doing well today, Tyler. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
As it was yesterday. Happy to be joining you as I always do on Fridays. But, yeah, everything's good over here in my land, yeah?
We'll talk some college football here in just a second. It is time for Who Sprung the Leak, though, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. I'm not sure what your mileage on the Stanley Cup playoff or Stanley Cup Finals is right now, but I think you could say the Panthers sprung a leak yesterday, blowing a 3-0 lead after the first period to lose 5-4 in overtime to the Oilers as the series is all tied up 2-2 heading to game number 5 coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, Tyler, what a game last night. Unbelievable. Like, if you were watching it, it's peak playoff hockey in the Stanley Cup Finals, so it's exactly what you want. It's kind of this Stanley Cup Finals kind of come down to two sides. It's either you want McDavid to get his Stanley Cup and then you settle for the Canadian team breaking the streak, or you're rooting for Florida and you're rooting against McDavid, or you're settling for McDavid to maybe get one with an American team later on in his career, and you're hoping the drought continues. So unbelievable scenes last night. And yeah, Florida, I mean, they looked great throughout the series leading up to this point. And, they go up 3-0 and it's like, oh boy, here we go again. And, Edmonton rallies back and, is able to, do the impossible, so to speak.
It's still funny to me that a team from Florida is currently the standard of the NHL right now, and the team from no team from Canada can seem to get over the hump of getting back to winning the Stanley Cup in the past 30 plus years.
Yeah, it's crazy, Tyler, and all the Canadian teams are blaming all the tax cuts in Florida, which is crazy.
That's a good point.
Yeah, like the Florida teams have been, they were bad when all the Canadian teams were winning at the start of the century and at the start of the decade. So it's interesting. Hockey's in an interesting state right now because then everything that's happening in Toronto. And everything like that, like they're just making the playoffs, missing expectations. Canadian hockey is not where it was.
Well, exciting finals going on right now between the NHL and the NBA. Again, we're 4 of the NBA finals coming up a little bit later on tonight. But we're inching ever closer to the start of the college football season. 79 days until South Carolina takes on Virginia Tech. And, as we've talked about so much on these shows, and I know you've written about it plenty of times yourself, this is an off season where we just don't know a lot of things about this team. Yeah, you got Lenore Sellers. Yeah, you got Dylan Stewart. In between that, it's still a lot of question marks, position groups, individual guys. And this year has a wide range of where it could end up between the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. And I was perusing the college football Reddit yesterday. I spend too much time on Reddit, but it does give me some good ideas from time to time. And this post was put on there of what is the best expected and worst case scenario for your team this upcoming season. So basically, if everything goes right, what would your team look like? If everything goes wrong, what does your team look like? And what's kind of the expected middle ground between those things? And again, when we talk about South Carolina, you're talking about probably 2 very different ends of the spectrum on what the best and the worst case scenarios could be.
Yeah, Tyler, there's a very, very, kind of broad spectrum here in terms of how this season could go. If you look at, I've done a little bit of research here, and, if you look at Lenore Sellers winning the Heisman, and this is something that a lot of fans, it could be out in the ether, right? If South Carolina puts it all together, he's certainly, going to be in contention for it. Has to beat a lot of big names and has to do a lot, on the field. But, South Carolina, the bare minimum, Tyler, believe it or not, would have to go 2-8 for Lenoris to win the Heisman. A precedent set in 1956 by Notre Dame's Paul Hornung, believe it or not.
Okay.
Right. So, but in the modern era, no team has, been 500 or below. And that 500 was 4 losses. So, throwing some stats at you. So they essentially have to, win 9 games for Lenore Sellers to win the Heisman. I think it's certainly doable. But so the realistic floor for, and if you would like Lenore to win the Heisman, I would say would probably have to be 7-5, and he would have to have one of the greatest seasons of all time.
Yeah. And like last year, Travis Hunter winning the Heisman was kind of one of those anomalies of a team that wasn't in the playoff or right there on the cusp of the playoff. having a player that won it. Same thing with Caleb Williams a couple of years ago back at Southern Cal. But more often than not, yeah, if you're winning the Heisman Trophy, you're probably involved in the playoffs, usually to some degree, if not right there, kind of on the cusp of it. So, yes, if Sellers is in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony, that probably means South Carolina's had a really, really good season. So let's kind of start off with that, the best case scenario here. Like, okay, if everything goes right, I know it's easy to say, oh, well, you just go undefeated and win the entire thing. I don't think anybody's going through the SEC unscathed this year. Didn't happen last year. May not ever happen again for all we know. So I don't think you're going to be talking about a 12-0 regular season and just waltzing your way in as the number 1 overall seed or something like that. But I think realistically, if you're talking about best case scenarios, best case scenarios, what, 10-2 maybe? Because again, I think the league's just that tough.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to factor in the kind of puncher's chance of the SEC. The league is deep, Tyler. It's deep, and if it only results in 2 losses on your schedule, it's kind of an anomaly, right? When we're talking about it being kind of a puncher's chance, or you go in and don't have your best week, like a team can go out there and play 75% and still beat you if you don't have your best week. Realistically, I think you can win every game on your schedule. We just know that's not how it's going to go because, it's football season, right? You have ups, you have downs, you have injuries, knock on wood here, and you have momentum swings and all that. So 12-0 is not realistic for this team, unfortunately. But, I think if you factor in some of the ups and downs, 10-2 is certainly reachable, right? Because if you were to space all these weeks out, right, and I think, give each team plenty of time to rest and play it almost like an event like they do the World Cup matches or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could realistically beat every team on your schedule.
Sure.
12-0 is a real possibility if you don't have the ebbs and flows of the SEC. But again, I think you factor some of that in. Tyler, I like the 2 where you were just at. So
let's look at the opposite end of that, and we'll go worst case scenario. Let's say Sellers has an average year. Let's say Dylan Stewart, is getting double teamed left and right, not able to break through them, and doesn't have a crazy statistical season. There's not really anybody else on the defense that's stepping up. Again, 2 years ago, you went 5-7 on what we thought was a pretty darn talented team, especially on offense. But where, as far as the floor of record, where do you see that as far as a worst case scenario?
Yeah, Tyler, I've got him at, I think a successful floor, it looks like, 6 or 7 wins. Because I had that's losing the entire month of October, which we know traditionally South Carolina's been great in.
Yeah.
And that's splitting Missouri and Kentucky and beating A&M and Clemson at that end. So that's 6 and 7 wins right in that ballgame. And if you factor not splitting Missouri and Kentucky. So, I think realistically, like you lose to Clemson too, which I would qualify for a floor season.
Yeah.
I could see this team winning 4 or 5 games, but that's if everything goes wrong. Again, that's on the same plane of 12-0. So I think a realistic floor for this team would be like if everything goes wrong, again, Dylan Stewart's getting double teamed, Lenore's is not having the best season, not seeing it. You're looking 5-7 straight in the face.
Yeah, that's kind of where I landed, 5-7. Again, just like 2 years ago, where there was a lot of individually talented players on that team, but as a whole, just obviously weren't good enough there. And again, you should be able to beat South Carolina State, Coastal Carolina. Those teams shouldn't be, too much of a problem. I think even with the unknowns, Virginia Tech is probably a game that South Carolina should win, though it could be a tight game for all we know. And then I got to think you'd be able to steal at least maybe 2 games in the SEC, even if your team doesn't end up being all that great. But yeah, probably about 5-7, I would say, is the lowest I could see this team being. And again, I base that off of assumption because, again, there's still a lot of things that we don't know, but I at least hope that they're not worse than that.
Yeah, again, and this is June, Tyler. This is what this time of year is for. And, again, with so many question marks at this point, like, we don't know. Like, there is going to be such this, broad spectrum of answers, ceilings, floors. But I think, from a South Carolina, from this fan base standpoint, they're just excited that there's hope in the waters, Tyler.
We'll talk about expected outcomes coming up next to wrap up hour number 2 of the Extra Point. Real quick reminder, if you go to the 107.5 The Game Facebook page, you can win our Father's Day grand prize. There are pictures of all of us on-air staff when we were younger. If you can correctly guess each and every picture correctly, you can win the overall grand prize, which is a craft beer card valued at $275 and a family 4-pack of tickets to go see the Columbia Fireflies. Second place prize includes a $75 gift certificate to Brooklyn Banquet and Conference Center. If we do have ties, we will have random drawings to determine who the winners are. That contest will run through tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. So, again, go to 1075 The Game's Facebook page and try and correctly guess all of our younger pictures to see if you can win the grand prize. It is the Extra Points Hour ahead. Joe Machika joining me as he does each and every Friday. We'll wrap up the hour next here on The Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Joe Machika wrapping up hour number 2 on your Friday here on the game, getting you set for it's actually going to be a kind of a interesting sports weekend. College World Series, NBA Finals, NHL, Stanley Cup Finals. There's a lot going on for, the middle of June. Savor it because, again, we're about to enter that dog days of summer as we anticipate the season, which seems so far away right now.
Yeah, Tyler, we're so close you can almost taste it, but yet so far away. This is the time of year where you fire up YouTube and watch the games that made you as a child or something like that. I fired up Mark Burley's perfect game the other night and having Hawk Harrelson take me back, which was unbelievable.
YouTube is the closest thing to a time machine I think we'll ever get. Because I love the fact that you can be like, man, you know what? I want to go watch a game from 2002, and I can do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do nowadays is like go back and watch games that, you remember the moments from, but maybe don't remember the rest of the game and watching the crazy things that happened to lead up to like the moment and stuff.
And there are so many things that like I remember watching as a kid, but you didn't have the knowledge and understanding of what you were actually taking in and going back and watching as an adult, like, oh, okay, I see how that happened now. Like, that's kind of neat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the best. And then, I always tease my friends when I talk about this. It's like it helps with ball knowledge too. Really, like the random bench reserve from one of these games that you didn't quite remember. Now you can always pull out whenever you're talking about random, NBA players, NFL players, you name it. So helps with general knowledge as well.
So in the last segment, we talked about the best and worst case scenarios for South Carolina. Let's go with what's kind of expected, I guess. Now, this does not necessarily have to be your record prediction for the season, but in terms of what you think the expectation for the team is going to be, and we're just kind of looking at the regular season here. We don't have to focus on the postseason and all that kind of stuff. We kind of set that ceiling at about that 10-2, that floor at about 5-7. So where's that kind of sweet spot somewhere in the middle there of what the expectation should be for this team in 2025?
Tyler, I'm going to say 9-3. 9-3 is a fair expectation. I think 9-3 is getting the job done, right? Like that's if this team wants to come out and really handle business this upcoming season, 9-3 is a reasonable expectation to do that. And I think it also allows the Norris to have that platform. If you were to have Heisman type of season or something like that, it would kind of give him the vehicle to do so.
I think right around 8 to 9 wins is probably where that expectation lies. I think some people may lean more towards 8 because there is less known about this team than what we had going into last season. But if they can be 75% of the way as good as we hope that they can be, I think 9 is certainly doable. And again, I think that's so huge in backing up what was one of your best seasons in recent memory last year. You obviously missed out on the 10th win in the bowl game, but still, you were red hot, kind of the talk of college football, one of them's at least, towards the end of last season. And if you could back that up with another at least 9-win campaign, where, again, you're probably flirting with the playoff, if not already in it at that point in time, I think that'd do wonders for this program that, in terms of national relevance, that we haven't seen in over a decade.
Yeah, Tyler, I completely agree. Again, you need to be in the conversation. Being in the conversation or being around the playoff or in it, it takes your program, up, to the moon, really. Like it really, really, really helps just being in that conversation and setting yourself as one of the standards of college football.
Yeah. So again, that's not, concrete, hey, here's what I think the team's going to end up being, but just kind of based on where we expect them to be and kind of what the perception is. I think that's fair, I would say.
Yeah, likewise. And it's June. So we'll see a lot of work left to be done before they chop the pads on and get going.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate you as always, Tyler. Thank you.
That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. 11 o'clock, Friday morning. Welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, no, not Wes, no, not Chris. Jack Veltri, a double dip this morning, filling in for those guys. They're out at yet another Shane Beamer football camp. We'll talk to Chris coming up here in about 15 minutes and get the lay of whatever's going on today. I do wonder if these kind of things become monotonous at some point. And I know it changes up. It's 7-on-7, and some things are O-line, some things are D-line. But, if you ever just, as those guys wake up and be like, oh, another camp day, here we go.
Yeah, I'm sure by now. I think this is, day 5 of camps and stuff. I mean, I'm sure they're ready for it to be Father's Day weekend and just chill and relax.
Well, until you see that one prospect that really jumps out at you, and you're like, oh, hang on, wait a minute, what we got here?
Yeah, that guy. I mean, yeah. So, I'm sure they're having fun. I saw Mike Furry, South Carolina's receivers coach, poke some fun at those guys on Twitter, tagging them and asking where Wes is. So, and he's there. So
they've got a reputation, that's for sure. And again, we'll get Chris's insight on what's going on today, as well as some news as well when it comes to what's going on with South Carolina recruiting, as a new hire was made yesterday in that department as well. But Jack, you've done this before. We're 79 days away from kickoff. You get the honor of answering today's trivia question. If you get it right, you can decide who gets the point.
Okay, let's do it.
So for reference, Chris is leading 5.5 to 2.5 right now.
Whoa, last time we spoke and last time we did one of these, Chris was behind by a point. Whoa.
Yeah, I think he may have been. So, yeah, he's come on strong these past couple days. Still long summer, still a lot of time. But you have the potential to either add to his lead or help Wes cut into it.
Oof, that's going to be tough.
All right, 1979 is the year. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Jim Carlin, the head coach at the time, led South Carolina to tie their record for most wins in a season in program history up to that point. What was the win total? You have a choice of 6, 7, or 8. How many wins did they have in 1979 that tied their program win total?
Let's see. And this was pre. Was this pre George Rogers?
No, George Rogers was on this team because he won the trophy back in 1980.
Yeah, this was before the SEC. They had some decent seasons under Carlin. I'm going to go with 8.
Okay, is that your final answer?
Yes.
8 is correct. They did indeed win 8 games back in 1979. Now, who gets the point?
Oh God. Let's see. Who doesn't like me as much in that group?
Is that how you're determining this?
Yeah, but we also have Chris going on the air at 11:15. That'd be awkward. But then also, I want to hear it from Wes. Can I just can we split the points?
Do you want to split the points?
Yeah, I want to split the points. I don't want to not give someone a point.
Okay, so that'll bring Chris up to 6, and that'll bring Wes up to 3. So the gap stays the same, but now we have nice, solid round numbers.
Yes, and honestly, that sounds a lot better to me instead of having half a point. So, yes, I'd rather split the points, and then if they both want to be mad at me for not giving them the full point, that's okay with me.
Well, they they've leaned into this quite a bit. I didn't know how seriously they would take it, but it's turned competitive. I'm happy to see that happening.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to going back to the 50s and 40s and seeing what you can come up with, because I'm sure these guys are going to have some tough times when it comes to that.
Some of these days are challenges. Like yesterday, we did a George Rogers question. That was easy. But some of these days, all right, and look, let's be honest, Carolina did not have the richest history when it came to football before, the 21st century. So some of these years are pretty bleak in terms of what actually happened.
Oh, yeah, but around this time, though, was pretty good. I mean, you had – and this was before the SEC with South Carolina joining the conference and stuff in the 90s. So you're talking like George Rogers era, Jim Carlin, some random games that they had on their schedule. I was looking at it earlier today before coming on here because I knew this was going to be on here. The 79 season, I mean, they beat Missouri in a bowl game. And so the Hall of Fame – does that even – I don't think it exists anymore, right?
Let's see. Did it? Let's see what it ended up. becoming. I don't know if this is still technically exists as anything else. Yeah, I think this was just kind of maybe a one-off at that point in time. But I don't, because like bowl games will change names and change venues, but I don't think there's a current bowl game now that technically used to be this bowl game.
Yeah, no. The only thing I could see that's along the same name is the Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic. So I guess this is like because you had like random small schools kind of playing in Benedict and all these other, HBCUs.
This game stopped after 1990, became known as the All-American Bowl. North Carolina State and Southern Miss played the last edition back in 1990. So it lasted from 77 to 90 as the Hall of Fame Classic and the All-American Bowl.
Yeah, well, it definitely does not exist anymore then.
So, and I mentioned that 79 team tied the single-season program record for wins. There's a distinction, though. They technically have the most wins for a full season competing against college teams up to this point. I don't know how much you've dug into the history of early college football seasons, but there's some really interesting opponents that most teams would end up playing at that point in time. 1903, that South Carolina team also won 8 games. However, 2 of their games that season, the first 2 wins of the year, came against the Columbia YMCA and Welsh Neck High School, which they won those games by a combined 102 to nothing.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Columbia YMCA, like the YMCA that's like probably like right down the block from the radio station, like that YMCA.
I assume so. There's no Wikipedia link for this team.
You have all right. So Welsh Neck, for reference, is now Coker University.
That's correct.
Which is in Hartsville, so they're a D2 school.
But at the time, they were a high school.
That's crazy. And that scores 78-0. And then you get into more mainstream colleges, like College of Charleston had a football team once upon a time.
At that time, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who Guilford is.
Guilford's in North Carolina.
Okay.
They're also a D2 school, but they've been around forever. And then you have Davidson. Where did the College Park? So where even is that? That's not the same ground as Willie B, right?
So that would have been okay, because so they show some of these games being played at the Old State Fairgrounds, which again are essentially where Willie B is. Yeah, College Park. That's interesting. That wouldn't be. I don't know. That wouldn't be where the football facility is now, is it?
So I'm pulling it up, and I can't find any specific pictures of it, but like the pictures that do come up are like the tailgating area, Gamecock Park, and the facility and stuff. I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I'm not seeing any record pictures from like 1903, which is not surprising, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not finding anything there either. And again, this was, this was 1903. They didn't necessarily have to play in front of 10 to 20,000 people. A lot of early stadiums in college football were just fields that they played in. So I look, I'm sure there's somebody that knows the history of this that's screaming at the radio right now, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure I can give you much mileage on College Park.
Fun fact about South Carolina's coach at this time, Bob Williams, who only coached until 1903 with the Gamecocks. He coached at Clemson for 4 different stints. So 1906, he was the coach. Then in 1909, he was the coach. Then from 13 to 15, he was the coach. And then jumped to 1926, he was the coach at Clemson again. And also during the 3rd stint from 1913 to 1915, he was the AD at Clemson. So we got a Clemson guy here that coached South Carolina first.
Yeah, that was the thing is back then, and again, these programs were, very loose in what they were at that point in time. If you go back and look at a lot of college football programs, a lot of them were changing their coach every single year, essentially. It wasn't and I guarantee you these coaches, if they were making money, was probably next to nothing at this point in time. I think maybe early on, a lot of teams had player coaches. So you'd coach and also play in the game too.
And they probably also had secondary jobs that were more day jobs. Go coach. Like it's definitely like it is now with high school guys. And
well,
work at schools.
I was gonna say, much like in high school, where like the football coach is also the history teacher or something like that. It's like, okay, you have to actually have a job at the school that's going to pay you a salary, and then you can coach football on the side. Like, again, that's not the case anymore in college sports, but in the early days, yes, like, okay, you're the professor of whatever, then you can also coach the baseball team.
Here's a good question for you. What subject would Shane Beamer teach?
Ooh, that is a great question. Isn't he a big history buff?
Yeah, it does. I think he definitely is a big history buff.
I feel like some kind of, history professor, the American history, Civil War, that kind of stuff. I could see that because he's talked about I think his family went to D.C. maybe sometime this year. We're going to D.C. I know he's talked about that. Now, obviously, he's gone up there for Capitol Hill stuff, but also like a sightseeing type of tour. And if you're a history nerd, and I love history myself, like D.C. is a phenomenal place to go.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, honestly, if we're talking about at the college level in terms of being a professor in something, we both know. I mean, there's so many different types of classes at these universities and stuff, and South Carolina is no exception. I'm looking it up because I'm pretty sure I had heard about this before. They have a golf class at USC.
Okay.
So you can learn basic rules, strokes, and strategy of golf. We know Peter's a big golf buff,
sure.
And that could probably be his area of expertise to teach outside of history.
Is that one of those like really easy elective classes like jogging was? Like, did you ever have a jogging class in college?
Jogging? Oh my gosh, jogging?
The community at college I went to had a jogging course that you could take.
I never knew that. I mean, I'm seeing all these different ones now. You got like karate and stuff. Like, this is stuff you could do like on the side, and it's like you could take it for college. It's crazy how much variety there is.
We call those the easy credits.
Yes, the freebies.
So Coach Beamer, I could definitely see Beamer being a history coach or history teacher. Excuse me, professor.
I can see it too.
Which, thankfully for him, he makes enough money where he doesn't have to do that.
Yeah, now this is not the old days where he's having to work 2 jobs. I think he's all good.
So there's your history lesson, 1979, 8 wins, which tied the program record at the time, but most against a full season of taking on college teams compared to the teams of the early 1900s. We'll check in with Chris coming up next, get the latest on what's going on with camp, and also discuss the news from the recruiting department with South Carolina as well. That's all coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Jack with you on your Friday here on the game.
All right, folks, let me tell you about our friends over at Integrated Media. The beautiful thing about it is you can take your dreams for that home, make it a smart home, dreams for your man cave, dreams for the living room, and they can take whatever you're thinking about and then just turn it into a reality. You can hit them up today, integratedmediainc.com, or give them a phone call. It is 803-948-8327. Their services include basically anything to do with your TV, your surround sound, your smart home services, or securities and cameras. If you work from home, for me, it was all about my home office. Didn't really have a great connection to the Wi-Fi. Needed hardwired internet, so they came in. They ran Ethernet throughout the home into my office, into my wife's office, and made sure we had a great connection there. And then we went a step further with whole home Wi-Fi. They can also hang TVs. They can hide the wires for you, and they can go all in on that man cave too. Hit them up today. Again, for more information, integratedmediainc.com.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Jack hold things down here in studio as Wes and Chris once again out at another Shane Beamer football camp. Been a busy week. 3 camps so far this week, and we'll get an insight from Chris Clark as he joins us now on the Love Chevrolet phone lines to discuss what is happening today. So we've got building a fire, pitching tent, going hiking, collecting badges. What are we doing today at camp, Chris?
Yes, no scout camp today, Tyler. Just your run-of-the-mill O-line, D-line, and 7-on-7 camp. A little bit of an earlier schedule today, so getting ahead of things. Wes is currently posted up at the team passing camp, the 7-on-7, out at the practice fields and indoor facility. I'm over at Williams-Brice Stadium on site, checking out the lineman camp. A few young guys to keep tabs on from the 2027 and 2028 class, and here in about 10, 15 minutes, we're going to get a look at some one-on-ones, and then we'll both be back over at the indoor facility to finish out a week of camp. Tomorrow, another one. So really 4 this week, technically. Joe DeCamillis is going to be having a specialist camp tomorrow morning at the stadium, and it'll be another one-day camp where it'll be really just any position, from quarterback to lineman, will be working out tomorrow. So definitely a full week here in Columbia of camps.
Noticed Coach Furry calling Wes out a little bit this morning.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you see it on Twitter?
No, I'm a little behind. Coach Furry must have been on one this morning because I was standing beside somebody, and he was taking some photos of us and was threatening to put them on Twitter.
Well, they are on Twitter. I'll go ahead and tell you that.
Ooh, okay. I'll have to check that out and lodge my complaint if I don't look presentable, which I probably don't, to be honest with you. It's another.
I think you look fine.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's kind of like the, Jack. We were getting our guy Jack with some candid shots. We hadn't pulled any of those recently, but Furry got me on that one. He must have been inspired by our handiwork.
Yeah, Chris, I'm glad you guys have started limiting your shots of me and stuff in the group chat and on Twitter and stuff. But wanted to ask you about the big news that came out last night with Brian Bachman being named the new assistant director of player personnel. I know it's very early since he was hired and stuff, but what can you tell us that you know about him, and what do you expect him to bring to Darren Usher's group at South Carolina recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, right? And we've known for some time that Shane Beamer is fielding a lot of questions in kind of this new era of college football, and Wes and I had talked to him about it a while back and asked him, the question was, and Jeremiah Donati had gotten this question a while back too, hey, will Gamecock football hire a general manager, right? That was the trendy term, we're going to hire a general manager, and that can take different forms. A lot of times it's a fancy title, sometimes it's just a director of recruiting, sometimes they do have more responsibilities. And the way that Beamer explained it to us was, we're probably not going to do that because although it's not titled general manager, Darren Usher really handles those responsibilities for us. But he did say, hey, look, I would like to get Darren, who's doing an elite job, is what Beamer said. And I do think he's done really good work here at South Carolina. Said, hey, we want to get him some additional help in that department. A while back, before Darren Usher was hired, there used to be an assistant director of, I think it was called an assistant director of player personnel at the time. And when that person left to go to the private sector, they didn't technically fill the job. And so we had anticipated for a while that might be a hire that was coming before the season. And so they made it. I think that's pretty much the role that Brian Bachman is going to be filling, working right under Darren Usher. He's been out here at camp this week, spotted him, keeping eyes on prospects, scouting guys. And, Darren Usher also came over from Oregon, where he had worked not once but twice, and most recently working under Dan Lanning. And so there's familiarity between Darren Usher and Brian Bachman. Certainly he's going to know kind of the Oregon method and the way they do things. They've done a really good job. They obviously have tremendous resources over there, but they do a really good job on the recruiting front as well and have for a long time. So I think when you just combine Usher and Bachman, it's a couple guys that best way I can say it is they know what good looks like, right? From being out at a major, college football contender in Oregon. And so it's still early, obviously in the job, but I think he's going to provide a lot of valuable help to Darren Usher and the rest of that recruiting department.
You talk about Darren Usher, and he's somebody that we obviously, talked a bit about when he got the job here at South Carolina. But since then, and this, kind of falls in line with recruiting, does kind of fall back into the shadows a little bit. In this recruiting cycle so far, is there anything that stands out or that's different that you kind of would say is a Darren Usher effect on how things are maybe going to be going forward, or is it kind of the same as it has been?
Well, I don't want to – I'd kind of split the difference. I don't want to say it's, exactly the same. It's certainly a full staff recruiting effort between the coaches, the support staff. I mean, heck, Aiden Harris was telling us about how Jordan Dove, who's one of the quote-unquote off-field coaches who works with the defensive line, was, one of the major keys in his recruitment, from Jessica Jackson in the on-campus recruiting department and interns. Like, it really is kind of a top-down approach where it kind of follows Shane Beamer and what he's all about, which is culture and the family feel and all those types of things. And certainly Darren's going to have his own methods and, what he thinks in terms of what they're looking for, scouting players and things like that. And if you look at just the results, they're off to a good start. There's a long way to go, but they have an opportunity to sign certainly a really, really good recruiting class. And I think that'll be the ultimate measure, not even necessarily how you get there. A lot of that'll be, about following that blueprint that Shane Beamer's laid out, but just the results at the end of the day. So I don't know if there's anything I can count to where I said, hey, this is something that I'm sure those things are there, right? But here's these one or two things that he's brought that's completely changed the program. But the thing about Darren is, he began his career not in the recruiting department, but began it at South Carolina, and he's a grad. And so I think that really appealed to Shane Beamer, who spent time here as an assistant. He's got the whole welcome home, family vibe. And I think Darren Usher, when he's helping recruit guys here, he's good at building relationships also. He likes getting, not just being an observer or a CEO type. He likes getting involved with recruiting as well, navigating this new world. He's a younger guy. He's been at Oregon. He's been here and has a love for this place, has an affinity for USC, and I think that certainly helps.
Chris, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Landon Duckworth. Obviously, the other night he narrowed his list of schools down to 2, with obviously South Carolina and Auburn. You mentioned in your What We're Hearing story on Central that South Carolina has the momentum here and Auburn's trying to change that. But from your perspective and what you've heard, how is South Carolina kind of flipped the momentum in their favor, obviously with him visiting and stuff recently?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting situation because, I think I've said this before. Sometimes you get guys who were once in your class and decommitted. A lot of times, you get completely dropped from the list. Sometimes you stay on it, but it's a little bit more of a token inclusion. For Landon Duckworth, he's always, since he decommitted from South Carolina, he was a very, very early commitment. You always figured, hey, this thing is not going to be over with this talent level, and it wasn't. And so he decommitted, opened things up. But he has legitimately kept South Carolina in the running, and if you didn't believe it, you do now because they're in the final 2. And so I think it's just staying consistent, the trust that South Carolina's built with him. Obviously, with the offensive coordinator change, Jody Wright once recruited him and is now the head coach at Murray State. Dowell Loggins was the OC, when he originally committed, and now you got some staff differences, right? So Mike Schulis come in and kind of picked up where things left off. Shane Beamer stayed very consistent, as has, Darren Usher and the rest of the staff. And I think that's really helped and made the difference. Now, you can't discount Auburn, especially with it being reported he was going to go there this weekend. But that said, I do feel like South Carolina is in a good spot. They just got to survive. And this is a guy that's super athletic and a super talented, high upside kid, I think.
Well, Chris, we'll let you get back to it out there at camp. You should know, though, your lead in the trivia is still safe. Jack did get the question right and opted to split the points between you and Wes equally, so you still have a 3-point advantage as of right now.
Jack, I owe you one. I appreciate it, and good job getting the question right. That's impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, let's get back to it, and we'll talk to you Monday.
All right, guys, y'all have a good one.
All right, Chris Clark out there at another edition of Shane Beamer's football camp. Jack, have you been to our 107.5 The Game Facebook page in the past 24 hours?
I have not.
Well, we are running a contest. You're not eligible because you work here, obviously, but we're running a contest for Father's Day that if you can correctly guess the baby pictures of all the on-air staff, you can win the grand prize, which includes a craft beer card, which is valued at $275, as well as a family 4-pack of tickets to go see the Fireflies. Second prize is a $75 gift certificate to Brooklyn Banquet and Conference Center. So if you go to the 107.5 The Game Facebook page, you can see younger pictures of all of us. Some of them are easier than others. There's one in particular that they posted yesterday that was, I think, the easiest one out of all of them, of one of our colleagues here from Gamecock Central. You can do the math on that one pretty quickly. But yeah, for anybody that wants to enter, go to 175 The Game, comment on all the photos. If you get them all right, you got a chance to win the grand prize.
Okay, you guys are gonna have to go out there and do it. So
trust me, they're not all that hard. Most of them aren't. Yeah. We'll come back, continue to talk some football. The most important stories in college football since the year 2000. Which ones are the most important to Gamecock football? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
All right, guys, you know what? This show presented by our friends over at Firehouse Subs. Almost lunchtime. Time for you to hit up firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app. Hopefully you already got that thing downloaded. I hit up some Firehouse Subs earlier this week. Went with my favorite, the brisket add bacon. But if you're wanting to try something new, we've been telling you about the new Hot Ones featured zesty garlic hook and ladder and spicy dill hook and ladder. Of course, the spicy one is so spicy that they actually have a little disclaimer here telling you that you should not consume it if you can't handle the Carolina Reaper. But if that's something you like, if you like to kind of push the limits, this one is a 10 on the hot scale here. That pickle is what kind of puts it over the top in terms of heat, soaked in the Last Dab Reaper Edition Hot One sauce. If you want something a little bit more mild but still good, hit up the zesty garlic hook and ladder. All that for you now at Firehouse Subs.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Friday on the Game. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass and powered by our friends over at Integrated Media. You can also check us out on the 107.5 The Game app, on the iTunes Store, or the Google Play Store as well. As we get closer to the start of the college football season, given the fact that it's 2025, The Athletic's been putting out a lot of these top 25 since 2000 articles and stuff like that, and some really good, insightful things and things that I've learned quite a bit reading some of these from some of the earlier years of the 2000s that I don't quite remember as well compared to the late 2000s on to the 2010s and stuff like that. And they put out this one yesterday, or the other day, excuse me, by Scott Docherman of the 25 stories that have changed college football since the year 2000. And this isn't necessarily like a game itself, but it involves players like Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow, obviously the implementation of the college football playoff, and I guess really to no surprise, the Supreme Court's rulings against the NCAA that led to NIL and sparked this chaos and new era that we live in as of right now as we get set for revenue sharing coming in at number one.
I mean, it has to be number one, and I don't think there's really any other option, because when you talk about stories that have changed the landscape of the sport, and this is just college athletics in general, I mean, NIL has been the biggest thing to happen probably since, ever in college sports. I mean, this is groundbreaking stuff. And it's been a few years since NIL became a real thing and stuff. And for the longest time, it was always, paying players like under the table and stuff. And obviously there were harsh penalties for doing that if you got caught. And now it's illegal. It's legal to do it. And, now we're at a point where we're in this new era of the revenue sharing with the $20.5 million for team stuff. It's just completely different from what we grew up with. You and I and other people that are our age or older grew up with a different era of college football.
I also think it's cool he showed you guys some love at number 23 with the rise of recruiting websites. Obviously talking about Shannon Terry and what he's done with On3 and 24/7 and, this phenomenon that it's become, because every major program out there has a recruiting site now, sometimes multiple ones like South Carolina does have, because of the desire for the information that you guys provide to a sport that for the longest time leading up into really around 2000, wasn't really privy to information to the public.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can remember hearing about when Central first started, and it was just, if I'm remembering correctly, from hearing stories from some of the older guys that have been with us forever now. I mean, it was just like a forum at the start and stuff, and then, in the 90s, Shu puts it together for Gamecock Central, and it just became this big thing. And now it's like, recruiting information is so critical. Like, I mean, people love that stuff, and obviously we don't just do recruiting on the website. Like, I mean, for me, for instance, I really don't dabble too much into recruiting, especially with like football and stuff, but
right.
Lend a hand here and there. We cover, just about everything, and so it's changed so much. It's not just recruiting, but it's a full-fledged thing now.
It's provided an outlet for that diehard fan that wants to know every single bit of information going on with their team. That, again, the general national writers of college football, if it's a 5-star quarterback committing somewhere, sure, but they're not talking about the 3-star cornerback coming to visit this weekend or something.
No, that's what you have us for. So it's definitely, I think you put it correctly on that. I think it's definitely for the diehard fan.
Absolutely. So in reading this article, and again, there's 25 of these things, they talk about, Nick Saban getting hired and how that changed college football, the Pac-12 falling apart, Tebow mania, all these kind of things that are really good, cultural shifts in the sport itself that have happened just in the past 25 years. But I started to think, okay, well, let's narrow this down to South Carolina. And maybe we can't come up with 25 necessarily, but what are some of the most significant stories of Gamecock football since the year 2000? What has changed and shaped this program in the years since? One moment, a hiring, a firing, all these kind of things that have shaped this program into where it is today.
I think hiring Steve Spurrier has to be at the top of the list. Like, you think about where South Carolina was before and what it eventually became. You got to think about it this way, man. Like, the stuff that happened during the Spurrier era is stuff that we had never seen before from South Carolina football, not consistently at least. And, even to this day, like, yes, South Carolina's put some good seasons together under Shane Beamer, but it's nowhere near the level of what Spurrier did with those 3 straight 11-win seasons. And you got to imagine if the playoff were established all the way back in 2011, 2012, 2013. We got the 4 team off the year after, but like we had the 12 team back then. We're talking about South Carolina being one of the higher at-large seeds in the playoff every single year, and who knows what would have happened. It was a different era during the BCS, and things that Spurrier did with the players that he produced, guys in the NFL that went on to have great success. It's stuff that like major programs have, and
Sure.
Carolina still trying to get to that point, put it together consistently.
And that would probably be number one overall because that significantly changed the perception of what this program is. Again, we talked about it, for the first 100+ years, they weren't even really making bowl games. You know what I mean? Like they were struggling to have winning seasons more often than not. And obviously, at the end of the decade, 1999, they went 0-11 under Lou Holtz in his first year. And then were able to go 8-4 after that and put together some strong seasons. But Spurrier getting hired, and look, it didn't happen immediately right after the gate. They had some struggles those first couple of years, but when they clicked into gear once the end of the 2000s rolled around and they went on that run, like nobody thought South Carolina could be that good as a program consistently. Like, okay, it's one thing to have a surprise fluke year when you got a combination of players or whatever, but to do it year after year after year was something I don't think anybody imagined was going to be possible here at South Carolina.
No, I mean, and you go back to even before 2011 when they started the streak of winning 11 games in a row. This was a program that was very much on the rise, and you could see the foundation being laid. Some of the guys that have been brought in, recruiting-wise, in-state, and then guys that eventually joined the program. And like 2009, 2010, obviously they make the SEC title game. They beat Alabama that year, and they're nationally ranked. Like the foundation had been laid in those seasons. You're right though. Like it was a slow burn for this program to get to where they are, were at the end of Spurrier's time. I mean, it was a slow rise. Really nice top of the mountain for them, and then obviously the ending wasn't great, but you still South Carolina wouldn't be where it is now without Steve Spurrier.
And within that same realm, I think you also have to talk about the fact that Jadeveon Clowney wanted to come here, right? And I get it, he's a Rock Hill guy from right up the road, but still for what that program had been for so long, to get what was thought of as the best talent in the entire country to commit to you and obviously end up living up to the billing in his 3 years here at South Carolina, that's huge. Because, again, I think that's something that a lot of people didn't think was going to be possible, for the longest time with where the program was. And, again, he goes down as one of the greatest of all time. Yeah, his NFL career didn't end up the way that people thought it was going to be. But for what he did when he was at South Carolina, no question he lived up to the hype.
No, absolutely. I mean, he became a number 1 pick at South Carolina. I mean, that's just – the stuff that happened with him and just the other guys that were so focal and instrumental in leading that rise to dominance. I mean, you talk about Connor Shaw, Stephon Gilmore, King Sanders, Marcus Lattimore, so many guys for those teams. We're still talking about, like, to this day, like it just happened yesterday. I mean, that's the impact they had on South Carolina football.
If you have any significant South Carolina stories that you think have happened since the year 2000, let us know on the Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. We'll try and get to some of those as we wrap up the hour coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Jack on your Friday here on The Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Jack along with you for a few more minutes, wrapping up the show here on a Friday. We're talking about the most important Gamecock stories since the year 2000. Want to get some of your thoughts, 803-404-6100. Name is Texter. Have to include the 2000 season after going from 0-11 in 1999 to 8-4 and winning the Outback Bowl. Talk about a major jump for a program. Yeah, and if we were extending it back before 2000, Lou Holtz getting hired here, I think is just as important as Steve Spurrier because, again, you had a program that was pretty far down that he helped bring up from the ashes and turn them into something consistent at least before Spurrier took over and eventually took them to higher heights. But Lou Holtz, a national championship winning head coach at Notre Dame, got South Carolina to a stable place when he was here.
Yeah, and I think that's something that cannot be lost here is because, it's easy to look at the Spurrier days and be like, yeah, those were the best in South Carolina, which they are. But I think it's important to remember that Lou Holtz played an integral part of getting South Carolina kind of, as we said, out of the ashes. I mean, that 99 season was awful, as we all know, 0-11. But to go from 0-11 to 8-4, winning a bowl game against the Ohio State team, I mean, that's just impressive. That it's just hard to believe that is possible. And then you look at the next year. I mean, 2001 was another great year, also beating Ohio State once again in the Outback Bowl. I mean, this team was just it's hard to imagine how fast things were able to turn around before, obviously, they kind of ended a little bit sour with going 5-7 in 2002, 2003, and then obviously 6-5 in 2004 before Spurrier came aboard.
So if I remember correctly, they would have been able to go to a bowl game had the fight against Clemson not happened.
Yeah, because they were 6-5 that year, right?
Yeah,
in 2004.
yeah.
So they would have had enough to get there.
Yeah. Also, Nameless Texture weighs in and says, how about sandstorm phenomenon going back to 2009? That's, in terms of the game day experience, and Wes and I talked about this the other day when we were talking about that Ole Miss game, it just happened organically. This wasn't like hey, Willie B, this is our new thing. It just kind of caught on over time. And, now we have it with the towels and the chants and all those kind of things. It organically rose to being one of the most loved traditions, the most well-known traditions for anybody. When people think of Williams-Brice Stadium, oh, man, I got to go see Sandstorm in person. It's become such a big thing.
I can't imagine what South Carolina and Williams-Brice would be like now if they didn't have Sandstorm happen. It's can you imagine if it being any other song or, label that South Carolina is attached to? I mean, I can't see it any other way. And you got 2001 as well, which has obviously been around a lot longer, but Sandstorm's the perfect complement to 2001.
So I was reading about this the other day after Wes and I were talking about it, but apparently the person who was in charge of playing Sandstorm that night against Ole Miss back in 2009 had previously been at Vanderbilt and tried to get Sandstorm to stick there, but the audience, the crowd didn't really react to it. But for that night, it stuck here at South Carolina and it's obviously become a tradition since.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big night beating Ole Miss, who was number 4 at the time, and I feel like that's probably one of the wins that really kick-started South Carolina being a legit threat in the SEC, and obviously they went on to have great seasons after that. But, yeah Sandstorm becoming a thing for South Carolina was huge.
Yeah, last one here real quick. Got about a minute left. Nameless Text says, within the Spurrier era, obviously making the trip to the SEC championship game back in 2010. Yeah, technically speaking, the most successful SEC season, at least, that South Carolina's ever had. Now, again, like every other team, they got bludgeoned by Cam Newton and Auburn, but again, that team was undefeated and national champion, so there's not a whole lot of shame in that one.
Yeah, I mean, look, not the most wins in program history that season or anything, but it really did, like we've said many times now, it definitely was a huge step forward for this program, being at a place they've never been before and haven't been to since. So we'll see. But, big year for South Carolina in 2010.
Appreciate everybody weighing in on the Firehouse Subs text on 803-404-6100. Jack, thanks for hanging out for the hour, and we'll talk to you Monday.
Yeah, see you Monday.
All right, that'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with myself and Terry Ford up next here in the game.
Our friends over at Game Day Men's Health can help you as a man reclaim your vitality by optimizing hormone levels. They specialize in TRT, or testosterone replacement therapy, which will help boost your energy and strength. And they're a lot different